In 2018, we had one of the most ambitious ideas we'd ever thought of. We would go back to Belize and chart a course of 3 separate regions in 1 week. Glover's Atoll, Hopkins, and Ambergris Caye. We thought our goal was pretty simple: shoot a fishing film that documented our journey. But there was a massive problem. We'd never shot a film before, which ended up causing a lot of problems. In prepping for this trip, George and I had thought we'd put together something pretty special. Not only were the 3 locations we were going to, interesting and exciting in their own right, they kind of meant something to what we had been trying to do over the past couple of years. For instance, going to Glover's Atoll reflected a strong and adventurous nature that we'd always had, of trying to stretch ourselves, push our limits, and do something that a bunch of guys from Alabama rarely ever do. The part of the trip we'd spend in Hopkins represented our love of just getting somewhere new and enjoying new food and meeting new people and just kind of getting to be a part of a culture that's very, very different, again, from Alabama. And then lastly, Ambergris Caye was somewhere we had fished before. It kind of represented the lofty goal of doing really awesome fishing. To keep costs down, we decided to fly out of Atlanta, which meant there was about a 2.5-hour drive for us. But as we soon found out, it burnt up a lot of energy for the day. It's important to note because we were trying to do something a little overly ambitious. We were trying to go from Atlanta to Belize City to Dangriga to Hopkins, Hopkins to the boat launch in the middle of the jungle, and out from that jungle on to Glover's Atoll, which is 30 miles off the coast of Belize. Again, since we were being scrappy with it, we were going to do all of that in a panga. Now, surprisingly, all of this worked, including a proper beer run. The first day we woke up on Glover's, it was incredible. Basically, we were in these wooden shacks that were built on piers. You fell asleep to the sound of the waves. As fate would have it, as soon as the sun got up, our guide, Lloyd, showed us around, and yeah, thousands of bonefish. Literally everywhere. And pretty important to point out, these are not just tiny little Belizean bonefish that everybody talks about. Some of these are quality fish that have kind of gone out to sea and come back. For most of us, this was heaven on earth. For Dan, this was a little troublesome because he was used to yanking bass out of the brush and giving them hell. Can't do that with bonefish. So within 30 minutes, Dan had broken off 8 bonefish. So once he finally landed one, it was a team effort to calm him down and tell him to stop yanking the thing so hard. Now, when we pulled up to the next flat, Tommy was like, no, I'm gonna get on the drone, y'all go fish, go stick you a couple. And I'm not gonna turn that down. All of us caught fish. George caught a bonefish, Dan caught a bonefish, I caught a bonefish, and one of the prettiest flats, still to this day, we've ever seen. Now, we wanted to hit one place on our ride back, so we loaded into the panga and gave it a go. As we were walking around this island, I caught this tiny group of bonefish that were tailing. They were pretty good size, but they didn't want to play ball. and they slid off. And, you know, at that moment, we were like, man, it would have been really good to have a sizable bonefish on camera. It was at that point that Lloyd looked out to the horizon, which was the Caribbean side of the atoll, and saw some pretty big waves. In a very kind and polite way, he said, hey, let's wrap up the fishing. We probably should go in. Now, us not being able to read between the lines, didn't really think about this until we got outside the atoll and we're in the middle of the Caribbean Sea. As Lloyd literally skied between the waves, he would tiller up and then drift down. But when we finally had the courage to bring the cameras out, it still was pretty gnarly out there. And I myself was not in a good place about it. When we finally crossed the Belizean Barrier Reef, and we're safe at last, the waves calmed down, we turned around to Lloyd and said, dude, that was pretty gnarly, right? And he kind of shrugged it off and was like, hey, I've gone out in hurricanes. And the next sentence he was like, okay, let's get your bag dropped off and get you introduced to Hopkins. Now, Hopkins was one of our favorite places that we visited. It's got a rich history. It's very different than most of Belize. It even has its own music culture, which is pretty cool. Thankfully, Lloyd picked up on the fact that we weren't there for hamburgers and hot dogs, and so he would take us down to his favorite local joints.
Peppers, vinegar.
Oh,
yeah.
fuego.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Nice.
You're not gonna put it on there? I'll take some.
No.
Don't pour it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, just take out
Coming out.
You take the onions out?
it. Yeah.
Put in the rice there.
We tried hot sauces that were just nuclear heat, but some of the best tasting food we've ever had. Fresh fish, fresh fruit. I mean, anything you could dream of with tropical food, it was there in Hopkins, and we were there to eat it up. And at that very moment, our secret weapon in Knoxville was getting ready. Now, for the fishing, Hopkins is known as one of the best places in the world to go after permit. They have these pancake flats, these very, very narrow flats of mixed coral that allow permit to come up from the depths, feed really quickly, and then bail. What's nice for fly fishermen is that on these pancake flats, that's where they're gonna tail. Now, we had a decent respect for permit. We knew they were a tough species, you know, well regarded as one of the hardest fish to target on a fly, but we thought we were kind of stacking our odds with Lloyd, who was a seasoned guide, being in one of the best places on earth, and realistically having decent weather and decent tides. We had done our homework. But as we came to find out, everything that can go wrong in permit fishing goes wrong. Realistically, if you count it all up, the only person who really redeemed themselves was Dan, when on a lunch break found basically a school of pet bonefish that were hanging out around a boat. I'm pretty sure he trespassed on someone's panga, got on the front of it, took one out of the school, and spooked the entire family. It's cool to watch. Sucked that he didn't catch the biggest one out of school.
Oh, he ate it too. Baby Dan.
Don't let it go up in your hands now. Hey! So as we wound up our time in Hopkins, a little bit of scorekeeping wasn't in our favor. Yes, we had gone out to Glover's on an adventure and found really good bone fishing, had documented it with pretty shaky cameras. But then if you move to the scorecard next, trying to catch permit in a cultured part of the world, nope. So we kind of rallied the troops and looked at each other and said, look, if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen at Ambergris Caye. It's a well-suited place to make a Grand Slam happen. You've got good tarpon, you've got migratory tarpon, you've got small permit, you've got big permit, you've got bonefish, and it's all within a really short panga ride. If there's any place that we could do it, Ambergris is gonna be the place. And that secret weapon, he's gonna be there. So we jumped on a plane, kind of unraveling our steps, going back through Hopkins, Dangriga, all the way back up to Belize City, and then over to Ambergris Caye, where we met Caye, which we all love Caye, and then Ben Fields. Now, Ben Fields is an elite cinematographer who's based out of Knoxville, Tennessee. Tommy proposed probably the wildest idea of all time. Hey, do you want to come with these guys you don't know who've never really operated cameras besides like photography and shoot a film? Crazy enough, Ben went at a drop of the hat. He said, yeah, I'm in, done. Now it helps that Ben knew how to fly fish, but again, I couldn't get over the fact that we were going to meet him for the very first time on the reefs of Ambergris Caye. And that's actually where our trips have a little bit of a wrinkle that I think plays in our favor, because Ambergris Caye is set right directly on the Belizean Barrier Reef, which means it's home to some of the best snorkeling and diving in the world. Instead of just letting a travel day pass by with margaritas and sitting by the beach, we dove in. We went snorkeling. We found out that Tommy used to be a free diver and can dive to insanely low depths. We found out that George and I still have ear problems and we cannot dive to insanely low depths. And then also, there's just something about getting in the water with fish and sharks and jacks and enjoying everything you see in a wild environment. Like, I'll be honest, I wouldn't have traded a half day of fishing for this. Now, settled, set, and targeted in Ambergris Caye, we had our work to do. Again, our goal was to cut a film worthy of a film festival or something grand. So we knew we needed to get more fish in the boat. We didn't have a permit. We didn't have a tarpon. We had some good bonefish. So we had to make it happen in Ambergris. Caye and I would take boat one, and Tommy and George would be in the other. I would try to manage my little camera and pitch it to Caye whenever I was on the rod, but then Ben Fields would go with George and Tommy because they were supposed to go to a really good tarpon spot. And my boat, we went the wrong way. Now, normally if you see this kind of conditions, you would think that we'd turn the panger back around and head on home. But we were fishing with an old sage of a guy named Erlindo. He'd actually been working for one of the first lodges in Belize for a long time. He was creatively, Erlindo steers us back into a mangrove labyrinth to get us as close as we could to fish that would not be in the wind and the waves. And what do you know? Magic happened.
Keep your tip down. Don't go against him. Yeah, you going against him. Huh? Yeah, that's good. Just keep it tight. Keep tight. Keep tight.
Should have taken my chance.
Next time.
Yeah, that's all right.
Over this side, Caye? Yeah, just right there. You ready? Is it rolling?
Yep.
With the day burning to an end, we saw George and Tommy on the dock. And they kind of waved their hands and they said, look, we can't talk right now, but we got a story to tell you. So we poured some drinks and ran up to the room.
Yeah, he stuck one early. So, my turn, right? Shouldn't take long. Go find some fish, right? Started fishing, started seeing some fish, and I was like, all right, here we go. Fish busting left, busting right, casting both sides. So yeah, I'm fishing, and finally, like, started slowing down. I was like, okay, fish stopped busting. I have to get a few more casts. I'm like, yeah, I'm about to go eat lunch. This is done. So I sent one more time. He's all right, let me get up there. I was like, yeah, I'm done with this. So I just threw one and then back casted, decent cast, and I was like, yeah, for you. Hand on the rod, turn down, step down. No! I turn around, I go, are you kidding me?
He made the cast for me.
Literally, I made the cast.
He made the cast for
Handed it
me. I'm stripping in his cast.
Boom! Like alley-oop set it up for him.
Oh God!
After fishing for 3 hours. It's called an alley-oop.
Day two hits like a lead balloon. I was up early, 5 a.m., making my coffee, getting excited, trying to plan out the day, and there's a wall of wind and rain outside our window. I mean, it's howling. Thank goodness for cell phones, because Orlando called me and said, hey, look, we're gonna be a couple hours late and try to see if this thing blows over. When it finally calmed down just enough, Tommy and I jumped in the boat with Orlando, and George and Caye and Ben got their day on the water. Now, the conditions didn't really improve all day, so again, hats off to the guides for making miracles happen. Our boat pulled around a mangrove-lined channel that had just enough water to be a small bonefish flat. And we were rewarded by tailing bonefish, which again is this really cool situation where you're throwing at fish in very shallow water and you get to see their reaction, which has its good sides, and yeah, it has its bad sides when you really get the fish.
Fly.
And so day 2 ended the way that it started.
Pretty miles are gonna take me by the hand, take me by the hand.
A honky tonk,
Play all night long. Wanna hear some funky Dixieland. Pretty mama gonna take me by the hand, It's not gonna stop.
Day 3 starts like a ticking time bomb. The weather's better, but we all know that we only have 2 days to go, which means one of these has to pan out. In my head, both of them actually have to pan out. And so because of the weather conditions, George and I shoot out on a mission for permit. Looking back, like, neither one of us really deserved to go after permit, but hey, we were doing it. And while we picked up some bonefish along the way, it all kind of culminates when we were in this back bay and there's these milling schools of permit. Again, about 100 to 200 permit, all just kind of lazily sitting on the surface. Our guide pulls us up very slowly, very cautiously. For some reason, I have my wits about me and I make a decent cast. Strip, 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 on. My heart starts racing because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, hey, this is it. We got a permit. And it's not just a permit, like, it's gonna be a permit on film. This is it. We made it happen, and then crap. My rod breaks in half. Now, I'm not gonna stop there and cry about it. I'm just gonna start pulling in line, and we're gonna hand line the fish the old-fashioned way. It's not gonna be a problem at all. So, disaster sets in, we're pulling line. Firemen wrap the fly line, finally see a silvery object in the water, and that's where my heart just jumps in my throat. It's a half-pound bonefish. I have a lot of questions. Out of hundreds of permit, how did this tiny bonefish grab it? Out of all of those permit that could have broken my rod, how did a half-pounder break a rod? And like, what was I even doing to break a fly rod that I had cherished for years and years and years? And so I just stared at it, and as nasty fate would have it, it's like, all right, guys, we're out of time. That's the day. Day 4 was it. This was our last day on the water. We kind of met as a group, like, what did we want to go after? Sadly enough for me, I'm like in film mode. Like, we're not having permit. We only have that bonefish. We've got to do something epic. And so the tarpon flats of Ambergris Caye are really well known. They're clean and clear, almost Caye style. Maybe that could kind of stitch all these story threads together and give us the film we were looking for. And here's a not fun fact. Sometimes the conditions can be too good. Because there wasn't enough wind, the flats were just completely calm. Because there wasn't a cloud in sight, the water was perfectly clear. And because it was really shallow, any bad movement on our part, the tarpon knew about it. We got shots. George and I will never admit how many shots we got. We got a bunch of shots. For Tommy and Caye, it was even a little bit worse. One fish lazily just kind of swam behind Tommy's fly and then went to saw the boat. Walking up to our room that night, I didn't know what to do. We had put together this ridiculously ambitious plan. Really hadn't had any bad travel scares, except for, crossing the Caribbean Sea in a storm. But overall, all the pieces were there, and the fish weren't. And that's what we learned. The very, very, very hard way. Fish don't care about your plans. The outdoors does not care at all about your script. And honestly, we shouldn't have brought one in the first place. Because as we look back, the coolest stories were not the ones that were even connected to this pursuit of a film. The coolest stories were sneaking up on 1,000 bonefish in the middle of the Caribbean Sea on an atoll. It was George's alley-oop tarpon that just happened to get on camera. It was even my Houdini permit that turned into a half-pound bonefish that all the guys got a great laugh out of. Because those are the stories that stick with you. Those are the stories we still laugh about. And that's the best and worst part. The trip wasn't a failure. It was actually a huge success if we looked at it the right way. From that point on, no scripts, no 5-layer plans. Just get the group together and let the stories fall out of the sky.